Good evening. As always, I am your Creepyconsular, and you have found yourself here in the Vale. Before I approve your visa to travel to the other side, let me ask you a question, my dear traveler. Is it ever too early for spring cleaning? The Creepyconsular smirks at you. But before you go, please remember my advice. If you ever feel uneasy, or if they notice you at any point, run, and I will open the veil for you again. I picked up a couple of odd jobs back in high school for some extra cash. I mowed lawns, babysit, hell, I even helped some kid run a lemonade stand over the summer. He paid me 50 cents. There was a house down the road whose owners were going to be out of town for the weekend. They were a husband and wife, but I couldn't tell you what they looked like. Their names slipped my mind. I didn't even know they lived there. What I do remember is that they needed someone to clean up a few rooms in the house, so I took on the job. They were going to pay me a hefty amount too. I think around $200, which was a hell of a lot of money at the time. I called a buddy of mine to help out and told him we could split the pay in half. The owners left that Friday morning, and my friend and I went over a few hours later. The first thing I can recall in vivid detail was the smell. God, it was fucking rancid. The whole house smelled like it was covered in shit, garbage, and rotting food. And the weirdest part about it was that the place looked spotless when we walked in. Hell, I could have sworn the kitchen floor was sparkling. Everything was so organized that it actually made me uncomfortable. It kind of looked like an IKEA catalog. What the fuck is that smell? John, the friend I brought, asked as soon as we stepped foot into the entryway. He looked like he was about to throw up and he gagged. I covered my nose with my hand. It didn't do much. The smell was stuck in my nose, almost like a worm that squirmed its way up there and got itself stuck in my nostrils. I felt my eyes watering at the intensity of the stench. We looked around for some air freshener. There was a can of Febreze under the sink, and John wasted no time in spraying it everywhere. He doused his clothes in it before handing the can to me, and I did the same. For a few seconds, all we could smell was the wonderful scent of berry and bramble. But this didn't last long. The odor penetrated the air again a few moments later, and at that point, it just smelled like rotten strawberries and dog piss. God damn, John coughed out. What the fuck died in here? We cleaned the living room first. I mean, there wasn't really all that much cleaning to do considering how unnervingly neat everything was, but we vacuumed and dusted anyway. John mopped the parts that weren't covered by the carpet, and I cleaned some glass cabinets with Windex. There was a large flat-screen TV on the wall, and some of the cables were hanging down. I considered plugging them back in, but I wasn't sure how to do that. I ended up just leaving them alone. The kitchen was next, also spotless. I cleaned the already pristine floor as John rushed to take out the trash, clearly ready to rid the air of the toxic waste we were breathing in. As I began to mop, John pulled open one of the bottom cabinets. You know, the one that rich people have to hide their garbage cans. I heard it open and expected to hear the rustling of the trash bag, but I didn't. It was quiet for a moment before John spoke up. Dude, he said, there's nothing in here. I looked up at him, stalling the mop in my hand. He was already looking at me. What do you mean, there's nothing in there? I mean, there's no trash in here, dumbass, he retorted. It looks like they literally just changed the bag. You think the smell's coming from a dumpster outside? I thought for a second, then looked at him blankly. We live in suburban America, man. There are no dumpsters outside. He gave me a look and rolled his eyes, mumbling a whatever under his breath. He grabbed the can of Febreze off the counter and sprayed it again. But there wasn't much that came out. He shook it, obviously frustrated. We must have run out. John groaned as we moved to the next room. Neither of us knew how much longer we were going to be able to stand the smell. You'd think we would have gotten used to it, but it was beginning to stink like rusted metal and 3-week-old steak. It got stronger as we entered the dining room. I tried to make quick work of wiping it down with Clorox wipes. I had the collar of my shirt pulled up over my nose, inhaling the leftover Febreze fumes. John had walked by the stairs at some point in search of another canister, and then it really sounded like he was going to barf. "Brad," he called, "I think it's coming from upstairs." I stopped cleaning. We looked at each other for a good minute, contemplating whether or not to check it out. I sighed. It was probably just some trash they'd forgotten to take out. Although, with how clean and tidy the whole house was, I was really starting to doubt it. Either way, we were getting paid for this, so the least we could do is take care of whatever the hell was making the place smell like shit. The stench grew stronger as we made our way up the stairs. John looked like he was about to pass out. I nearly did. I walked down the left side of the hall, while John walked down the right, splitting up so we could get out of here as soon as possible. Each room I checked looked so unbelievably spotless that it actually ran a chill up my spine. Figures. I really just wanted to leave at that point. We could just call an exterminator or something like that to take care of it. John was stomping around. It was obvious he was just running from room to room to say he'd checked it out so we could leave. I couldn't blame him. If I had to inhale any more of the pungent air, I was really going to die in that house. His footsteps stopped, stalling for what seemed like a good 5 minutes. It was eerily silent, the kind where you just know that something's not right. I left the upstairs bathroom to go find him, and ended up in the master bedroom. The smell had almost tripled in intensity, and it hit me in the face so hard that I was knocked backward. John was standing a little ways away from the side of the bed. He was completely still, frozen in place. If I squinted, I might have been able to see him trembling a little. His face had paled, completely blanched. It looked like his blood had literally run cold. I can't say he seemed like he'd just seen a ghost. No, it looked like he'd seen someone get shot in front of him. I cautiously made my way over to him, doing my best to ignore how my eyes watered from how strong the smell was getting. "Dude," I said, "what happened?" He pointed to the bottom of the bed. The quilt was long and touched the floor, so I couldn't see what he was looking at. "Look under the bed." I furrowed my eyebrows at him, then took a deep breath of the disgusting air before crouching down and lifting the bottom of the blanket up. I couldn't see what it was at first, but I knew for a fact that this is where that god-awful smell was coming from. I don't know how it had gone worse, but it did. It was rotten and putrid, like something was decomposing. It had gotten so strong that I nearly passed out, but I held my breath and squinted my eyes to see what was under there. It was something small and oblong. Its silhouette wasn't exactly smooth. There were a few bumps along what I assumed was the top of it, and deep indents in other parts. It was difficult to see in the dark, so I lifted the quilt a little more to get some light in from the rest of the room. The slight increase in brightness gave way for me to make out a little more of it. The thing itself was a weird mix of pink and gray and gross, but it was kind of hard to tell because it was covered in something dark and wet that dampened the carpet below it. I leaned in a little closer to get a better look, and I could now make out relatively even shapes on the left side. Well, maybe even isn't the right word. Some parts were sunken in to the point where I really couldn't make out what they were supposed to look like. But I did see that the thing had hair. It was sticking to it with the weird dark stuff, and the sight of it made me queasy. The combination of rot and slop just made me want to vomit. The hair was at the top of it, but there were also some tiny strands in one spot that I could see solely because they were all clumped together. It looked like there should have been another on the other side of its surface. There was a bump in the middle of it that looked crushed in. A little further down, there was a stubby appendage. 2 of them, I think, but I couldn't really tell. There were 2 longer ones near the bottom of it. I know that one was shorter than the other, almost like it was cut in half. In the center of the thing was a jagged opening that was covered in that dark wet stuff, and there was something coming out of it. It kind of looked like a bunch of sausage links that had spilled onto the floor. And then I realized what I was looking at. I did vomit then. I vomited so hard that I thought my throat was going to tumble out of my mouth and land on the carpet next to that thing. I wanted to cry. Maybe I did. I don't know. I can't really remember much of what happened after that. I'm pretty sure we ran out of the house. One of us called the police. I'm thinking it was John. I don't even know if he told them what we saw. I don't know if he could. I've tried to forget it. Really, I have. I went to therapy for a good while after the fact, but it was so hard to talk about it that I ended up just dropping the whole thing. I know that therapy is supposed to help with that. Talking about it, I mean. But any time I thought about it, I'd feel like I was going to throw up. Sometimes I did. Even vomit smelled better than what was in that house. Something like that just sits with you forever. And maybe it's the guilt that's making me write this. Guilt from what? I don't know. John and I stopped talking after that, so I can't go and ask him about any of this. It'd be a real shit thing for me to do anyway. Some things just have to stay dead. I'm 30 now. I live in a state over and have a pretty good job. No more weird tasks for me. Things are steady going, and I've started to appreciate the mundane. I like to think I've been doing a little better in life. But every now and again, I'll get a whiff of that rancid smell, even though this had happened over 15 years ago, and I should have forgotten it. As I write this, its vile stench is starting to fester in my nose, and I swear it's coming from under my bed.